China's brought down some big new names in the digital world recently, Alibaba and Group, and more recently, ride-sharing app DiDi. China has stated that it's pledging greater security for publicly listed companies. It says that it believes that not enough is being done to protect user data. Why? What is China doing? And maybe we should also be asking whether China is operating on a more sinister level. Welcome to this edition of IG Trading the Markets podcast. I'm Jeremy Naylor. Joining us now is Neira Jones, independent cybersecurity and payments specialist, board advisor, and international speaker. Neira, it's a pleasure to have you on with us today. Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome, Jeremy. Glad to be here.
Now, for us in the West, it's been what I can only describe as the most extraordinary display of corporate destruction that we have seen from China. These are multi-billion-pound companies listed here in the West, most notably in New York, and they have done what appears to be their utmost to completely destroy what the companies are trying to do. Poor old Jack Ma, where he is now, I have absolutely no idea. What are they doing? Is it all about data security, or is there something else going on, do you think?
Of course, it's not about data security, Jeremy. And if you look at Jack Ma's empire, absolutely well described by you, it was total corporate slaughter. I mean, it would have been the largest IPO in the history of IPOs, and if you look at what's been happening ever since, you will see that slowly the empire is being carved up, and some dubious partnerships are forced upon that, and even to the point that the Hupan University shouldn't be called a university anymore, and I believe Jack Ma stepped down. So it's a phenomenon, I would say, that is not just happening in China. Although, because of this nature, China will approach things slightly differently than we do in the West. So you will have seen, Jeremy, that throughout the world, and not just in Europe, but everywhere, there is this general sentiment of reining in big tech. So reining in big tech through regulation, through sanctions, through penalties, whatever you're trying to achieve.
That's all very well, and I know in the West we do have certain standards, and corporates have to comply to antitrust and so forth. In fact, I know that Google is up in court again. I think it's the fourth time this year because of antitrust concerns. So we have our standards over here. But what are we dealing with here in China? In your experience in cybersecurity, how should we approach or be dealing with China on this level of digital access?
Well, China or any other nation state in terms of cybersecurity has, of course, become a matter of national security for many geographies. And it's fair to say that 2020 was an unprecedented year because everyone was forced into digitization and achieve in a number of months what normally would have taken a number of years. So we were forced into digital throughout the board, and of course needs must. Perhaps cybersecurity fell by the wayside because of an increase in working from home, an increase in cloud and digital services, and so on and so forth. So it's not that the regulations are not there, Jeremy. The regulations are there. You know very well that in Europe we have the General Data Protection Regulation. In the States, 50 states, all states have provisions for data breach disclosure and other aspects of cybersecurity. And 3 states, now 4 with Colorado, who have just announced have formal data protection regulation similar to the CCPA in California. So the regulations are there. The problem with regulations is that the law is for the lawful. When we've got technology advancements that move so fast to deploy new technologies and innovation that make our world the way it is now, criminals are not hampered by long regulatory cycles, and they're not hampered by regulation. So they innovate too. So it's a constant catch-up. And I think we shouldn't beat ourselves up because the situation is very different now than it was, say, 10 or 20 years ago. 10 or 20 years ago, we were protecting the perimeter. And we had a number of tools, and you know very well how to do that. Now there is no such thing as a perimeter because everybody uses cloud services. There's almost everything as a service. Everything is becoming faster and faster, including payments. So therefore, crime increases. The more digital, the more crime. The more users, the more crime. And the pandemic has accelerated that.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we are all, of course, subject to almost the worst behavior, I suppose, really online. If we do take China at face value, under the new measures, China has said it will improve regulation of cross-border data flows and security, crack down on illegal activity in the securities market, and punish fraudulent securities issuance, market manipulation, and insider trading. Now, that's quite a lot. Is there anything there, first of all, that we don't already do there in the West? Am I protected about cross-border flows and security? Am I protected about illegal activity? Am I fair and reasonable to suggest that punishment should be handed out to fraudulent securities issuance? Is there anything there that China says it's doing in what it is doing with the destruction of corporate China that we don't already do in the West?
No, there isn't. And I'd like to point out one fact, Jeremy. So Jack Ma's empire relied mostly on its data. Now you can imagine the vast amounts of data that all of his companies had that enabled him to be the success he was, but they were not the subject to this new clampdown by the Chinese Cybersecurity Authority. Because what the Chinese authorities did is actually stopped the New York listing. So suddenly, they were very well on their way of destroying Ant Group, but they're not scrutinizing their security posture, are they? The only security postures they are scrutinizing are for the companies recently listed on the New York Stock Exchange. And what I read into that, Jeremy, is that China is trying to encourage or rectify, I think is the word used in most media, their big tech to actually list in China or potentially Hong Kong now, since they're clamping down on Hong Kong as well.
That's interesting. But at the same time, I'm at a loss to understand China's big picture plan here, because why, when China has got, I mean, Alibaba listed in the States, as you say, one of the world's largest ever IPOs, Alibaba has the potential to be bigger than Amazon.
Yeah.
Ant Group is a payments company. You're a specialist in payments. You know
Yeah.
what the payment situation is like. Ant Group has the potential to be a global payments dominating feature. DiDi has just recently listed. It has the potential globally to be bigger than Uber. China has had an opportunity here to dominate the world. I can't understand what China is doing, even if it is, let's say, worried about the data thing. What is it trying to achieve here? Why doesn't it try and achieve world dominance, if that's what it's after, through
Well,
dominating the Western securities
Well,
markets?
I'm at a loss as well, I have to say, Jeremy, because if you look today or yesterday, as I was watching the DD story developed, already we have a shareholder class action suit that's been lodged from obviously from investors, because as soon as the clampdown was announced after the IPO, obviously the share price took a tumble. And now the shareholders are saying, hang on, I didn't buy into this. So that is now a class action pending. So what are China trying to do by, destroying its own businesses and essentially making foreign investors more and more shy in trying to invest in those companies? I don't know what's going on.
To what degree do you think that China may be concerned about the West being able to probe these Chinese companies that are listed in New York and elsewhere? Do you think there's a concern that China is worried that the US is able to access China through the back door, if you like, through these companies? Is that
Well,
possible?
well, Jeremy, everything is always possible if you have a good lawyer. But joke aside, if you're listing in any market, you will be subject to laws and regulations in that market. and you know them as well as I do, and therefore there will be, for example, a right to audit. And I think I actually don't understand what China is doing in trying to kill their big tech, but similarly, doing business in China is becoming increasingly difficult in terms of big tech because of the scrutiny that would be imposed. So in Europe, of course, we've had Schrems too, in relation to data transfers, and now we have the new guidelines on standard contractual clauses and everything for those transfers. Those mechanisms exist, Jeremy, in terms of scrutiny, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a play by China saying that we don't want our big tech to be scrutinized. But obviously there are frameworks that those companies have to abide with, and it's not about surveillance of any given market, I don't think.
Just one final question. Do you think that in what China is saying here, that they actually could possibly be right? These big tech companies rely on the storage of our personal data. Is there a risk of that data becoming vulnerable? Do you think companies in the West do enough to protect the data? As I say, this is going back to the Chinese line that they want to do all these things. Are businesses, generally speaking, in our day-to-day lives, doing enough to store our data securely?
So that's a very generic question, Jeremy. So as I said earlier, the situation was very different 20 years ago than it is now. Can a business ever do enough to protect themselves? No, because as I said, cyber criminals innovate all the time, and you've seen the very recent ransomware attacks and the SolarWind attack on pipelines and such like. So this is happening all the time because criminals innovate as well. So we're always playing catch up. So and all companies can do is be prepared and manage their risks, because attacks are inevitable. It's what you do to recover, what you do to enable you to be back up and running in the quickest time possible, so as to minimize the impact on your organization, on your ecosystem, and ultimately your customers.
Interesting subject. Neira, we've got to leave it there, but thanks indeed for joining us. It's been great talking to you again. Thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you.
That's Neira Jones, independent cybersecurity and payment specialist, board advisor, and international speaker. For more videos from us here at IGTV, join us on Twitter at IGCom, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.